Hi everyone, today I am making a coaster with the Edmonton Oilers logo inlaid into it. So here are the drawings that I made in Inkscape. I just took a Oilers logo that I got off the internet and then traced the bitmap and got all the vector line drawings here. And then these red ones have the tolerances for the laser added to them so that everything fits nice and tightly. And these blue ones are the ones that I'm not going to cut, but those are the original size of these ones. And the black ones are just the original size, but they don't need tolerances added. So I already had most of the wood for this project cut for previous coasters I had made, but I needed a small piece of Osage orange for the oil drop. So here I'm just resawing it down to a little above 0.2 inches, and then I am going to run it through the drum sander a bunch of times so that it's nice and smooth for the laser. Okay, so here I'm up in the laser room, and first of all I'm just going to grab a piece of maple that I already had from a previous project and cut out the border that goes around the logo. I should note that I am using a 45 watt laser, not the standard 40 watt. In RE3 I'm just going to drag the border onto the wood in the picture and then click run. For cutting 0.2 inch maple, I generally use settings of around 42 speed, 100 current and power, and 1 pass. Now that the border is cut out, I'm just going to set that aside, and then I'm going to get out a piece of holly for the next piece that goes inside the border. Here's the next piece I have to cut for the coaster. Now, I didn't have the laser take another picture of the work area, so that's why it looks like I'm still cutting on the maple, but it is actually on this piece of holly. Holly is somewhat harder to cut, so I use the same settings as for maple, but I just slow the speed down to 30. Now that that piece is done cutting, I'm going to grab it out of the machine, but I'm going to leave the center piece in the machine because I'm going to cut out the rest of the white pieces from that part. And it looks like this piece fits nicely in the border. Let's put this piece down at the bottom so it's easier for the camera to see. Now that I have had the laser take a picture of the work area again, I'm going to drag the next part onto my scraps from the last cut. Now, if you're wondering why the Oilers is backwards, it's so that the curves, which are slightly angled from the laser, fit together nicely. Now that this piece is cut, I need to pop out all the pieces, which is actually kind of slightly harder than it should be because it didn't cut all the way through, but it's basically all the way through. Now I need a piece of wenge for the letters, so I'll just grab that out of my drawer of scraps. Pop that in the laser. And now I'm going to cut the black inner border and the letters. These are supposed to be blue, but I don't have any naturally blue woods, so we're stuck with wenge. I had some problems cutting the wenge. The light grain cuts slightly harder than the dark grain, so even when it cuts through there are still bands that are left of the light grain. I probably should have run this job at a slower speed, but then sometimes the wenge starts to char and burn. Now the letters are done cutting, and I'm just struggling to pick this up one-handed. Even after going over this cut file twice, I still have some problems with it not cutting all the way through on the light grain areas. A few of the pieces cracked while I was getting them out, but it doesn't really matter as you can't tell once I've put them into the coaster. There was one particularly stubborn area around the border that I needed to use the X-Acto knife to help detach. Now I need to assemble all the pieces into the coaster. Now I am inserting the letter pieces, which I am doing from the back because they fit better with the slanted kerf that way. Now I'm going to tap these pieces in so that they are flush with the front of the coaster. Okay, now I need that piece of Osage orange that I cut at the beginning of the video for the oil drop. So I'll set that in there. Now once again, I did not take a new image of the work area with the laser, so I'm just going to use the live video feed to align the laser dot to the corner of the wood. I had never actually tried cutting Osage orange on the laser before, so I just used the same settings as I use for maple. After the first pass, I checked it and it still wasn't cut all the way through, so I ran the same settings again. It probably still could have used a little more power as it was still slightly stuck in the piece of wood, but it was close enough to all the way through. Now I just need to tap in the last piece. That looks good. Now I'm just going to crazy glue the pieces in from the back to make sure they don't fall out before I glue the backing on. This is crazy glue that I used, but really any crazy glue that is liquid enough to run down into the cracks between the pieces will work. After the crazy glue dries, I run the coaster through the drum sander again to make sure that the surface is nice and smooth and any glue that leaked through the cracks gets removed. Okay, now I am ready to glue on the backing of the coaster, which I somehow managed to not record cutting out. This part probably would have gone faster if I had just found a larger paintbrush or put the glue right on the coaster to begin with. I put the backing on with the grain perpendicular to the grain on the front of the coaster to keep the coaster from warping. Now I'm going to clamp the coaster between two pieces of plywood with some wax paper in between to make sure I don't accidentally glue it to the plywood. Okay, so it's time to unclamp this. It should be nice and dry by now. I'm just majorly struggling to get this Bessie clamp off. There we go. So it seems like it's nicely adhered all the way around the edge with no gap. And it sits nice and flat on the table without rocking. Now I am using the oscillating spindle sander to clean up the edges and get rid of the burn marks from the laser. Now that I have finished going over the edges with the oscillating spindle sander, I'm just going to go over them again by hand to remove the burr and remove any last burn marks that are left. Okay, it looks like all the scratches are gone now, and it's nice and shiny. And now for the final step, I'm just finishing the coaster, along with 3 others I had also made at the same time. First of all, I'm just going to go over all 4 coasters one last time with tack cloth to make sure there is no dust or wood chips left on the surface. This is the finish I used. I am using an outdoor finish because they are coasters and will likely be getting wet from time to time. I am going to apply 6 coats of finish to the front and 3 or 4 coats to the back. When I finished the fronts of the coasters, I did not shim them up off the wax paper, and some of the finish ran underneath and kind of collected along the edge of the coaster, so now I have to sand that off. Now that I have finished sanding the backs again, I'm just going to go over the coasters with tack cloth again and then start applying finish to the backs. I learned my lesson and now I have the coasters up on small shims to keep the finish from running under and sticking to the fronts. And now for some pictures of the finished coasters. I'm really happy with how all the colors turned out, considering that I'm using all natural woods. I will leave a link for the drawings for these coasters in the video description. Thanks for watching and bye for now.